Okay, well, hello, and welcome to Dino, only on RiotRadio.ca and all of our other affiliations. Today, we are digging into a new dinosaur. We've gotten through all of the P's, we're out of the P, and we're into the S's. So, if you haven't watched the episodes before, I'm slowly going through all of the dinosaurs found in Canada that start with a letter in the alphabet. We've got to S, we're getting there slowly but surely. The old episodes, I did like 3 dinosaurs a day, didn't like it, so I thought I'd try one, and I think it's better this way. So today, we're talking about Saurolophus, or Saurolophus. Now, this is a hadrosaur. We talked about hadrosaurs last episode as well, and this one, if you realize it's from last episode, we talked about Pro-Saurolophus. And now Pro-Saurolophus, means before Saurolophus, and this is why it's called Pro-Saurolophus, because of this dinosaur. So, its name means lizard crest, and that name comes from the weird crest at the back of the head. Now, I brought my hat to kind of show that it looks almost like you're wearing a backwards hat, because it just kind of sticks off the back of the head, and it's a funny looking dinosaur. It's a big one too. So it comes from the hadrosaurid family. So the classic duckbill, a crest, ability to walk on 2 legs or 4, and was probably very noisy. Now that's kind of an inside joke. Parasaurolophus, Prosaurolophus, Saurolophus, whatever you want to call them, hadrosaurs are known to be like trumpeters, we think. So they'd be loud, so very noisy. It was found in both Canada and Asia, and possibly in California. In Asia, it was Mongolia and China. The possibility is China as well. A classic Canadian staple. It was found in the Horseshoe Canyon, or Old Man Formation, in Alberta. And a new one for me, we've never been there before in this episode, and it's kind of weird, is in the Namgent Formation in Mongolia. Now, Mongolia is a place I really like, so it's kind of cool. It lived 70 to 66 million years ago, and it is one of the few genera, that's of dinosaurs, that is, to be found on not 1, but 2 continents. Pretty cool. I think this is really awesome to see, because you get some really cool parallels when you look at these dinosaurs. So this type species was first found, I say found/discovered, by Barnum Brown, who's a classic when you come to paleontology in Canada, in 1911. Barnum dug up a nearly complete skeleton. The name of the skeleton is AMNH5220, or 0. This discovery was one of the first nearly complete skeletons ever found in Canada, which is just amazing. That's groundbreaking to find. Like, you're not like finding pieces of a skull, a femur, a tailbone, a piece of spine. You're finding almost the entire dinosaur, which is just incredible. Currently, though, this specimen that was found, AMNH5220, is currently being displayed at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. So if you ever go to New York, check it out. He described it in full for the time, I say, next in the year of 1912. So when he named it Saurolophus osborni. I never really look up why it's osborni. Maybe he's a fan of Spider-Man and Norman Osborn. I don't know. At the time of its discovery, I say Saurolophus, it's phonetically Saurolophus. So Saurolophus was so important as a reference to other hadrosaurs because it's kind of one of the first big ones to be found and one of the most complete ones to be found, which is so cool. It allowed paleontologists to learn so much more about what we think about hadrosaurs. You also can see this in Prosaurolophus and Parasaurolophus, or Prosaurolophus and Parasaurolophus. Again, they've been named. Pro is close and para is near. So very, or pre, I guess before and near. So very nostalgic of the dinosaur. Later, these 2 skulls. We found 2 skulls and some skull fragments, some skin impressions. But yeah, not since then. That was about it. So thanks for being here. That's the episode. No, so let's kind of talk all about Prosaurolophus. It's a genus. It is the type genus for the Saurolophinae family, which means it's the whole family, the genera the genus is named after Saurolophus, meaning it was the first discovered and it was different enough to become its own genus. At the time of it walking the earth, it would have shared its space with Edmontosaurus, which we talked about, Hypacrosaurus, which I think I've also talked about, but it didn't seem as nearly as common to the area as these two dinosaurs did as it did. It was kind of sparse. We've only ever found the one complete skeleton and 2 skulls and some skull fragments. If you look, I guess at the time, we would also have to look out for tyrannosaurs like Albertosaurus, which I've also talked about, and some smaller theropod dinosaurs like Troodons. Oh man, I really should have got this phonetically. Saurolophus, and this one's great. Richard Eostesia. So, got out there for Richard. You never really know. Now, these ones wouldn't really be a problem for big Saurolophuses, but for young or juvenile, it would have been a big threat. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. After all that I've mentioned above, that's it for Osborne. So Osborne, I got a page and a bit of notes of Osborne because we only found the skull and the full complete. But we're in luck. And for the first time in an episode of Dino, I'm going to go from Canada and we're going straight over to Asia. So it has an Asian cousin who can shed a lot more light on what this dinosaur must have been like. So let's fast forward to the years of 1946 through to the years of 1949. A Russian-Mongolian expedition, paleontological expedition, goes to, never would have guessed it, Mongolia, and finds a new dinosaur. But what could it be? Well, we have, oh god, this is a Russian name. We have Anatoly Rozdeskivensky described this new dinosaur as a species of Saurolophus. Saurolophus angustirostris. And from this discovery, and many other skeletons that we found, we can actually see it. So now you can see there's 2 type species, Osborne. It looks kind of small, but it's still a big dinosaur. Right? That's going to tower over me. And then Saurolophus A, we'll call it, and Saurolophus O. Saurolophus A is monstrous. So we'll get into that. Now, this is insane. It is the most abundant hadrosaur dinosaur we've ever found in Asia. We found at least 15 specimens since the first discovery. Now, the major difference between the two are their sizes. As you saw in that image, Osborne being about 8 meters, which is 27 to 28 feet long, 3 meters, long, it's 3 meters, about 9.10 feet tall. For perspective, I'm 6'2". This thing is 3.8 feet taller than I am, and that's at the hip. So it's the back hip. So they kind of slope forward. So it's not nearly as tall standing, but it's still a big dinosaur. And weighing in about 3 tons. And that's American tons. Short tons is like 3.3. I don't understand the short tons versus long tons thing. On the other hand, though, Angustirostris was a monster, as I said. This thing measured in at 13 meters long, or about 43 feet. And at about 4 meters, or 13 feet tall at the hip. This is two of me and more at the hip. That is a giant dinosaur. And it could have weighed up to 11 tons. There's some other things that change too. So the coloration of the scales, the pattern. When looking at the scales of Angustirostris, you can see that it had these weird, almost like dorsal spines that stuck up, but they weren't very tall, and they kind of stuck more towards the middle. So you can kind of see all these differences. And again, you can kind of see this is definitely Angustirostris. You can see the spines along the back. That is very much just to this dinosaur. Its American counterpart would not have had nearly as definitive of that. And the pattern too, the molted pattern, we're not entirely sure if it would be like that, but we have skin impressions. So it's pretty crazy to think we have skin impressions. We can kind of see what it might have looked like, or at least felt like. Now, we did find 2 other alleged species. One was found in California, so surfing, and then one was found in China. But nowadays, we know that both of these are not valid. The one found in California was linked to a Edmontosaurus, and the one in China is probably actually just a younger Saurolophus, just Angustirostris. That's hard to say. So 2 species, not 4. So one thing all Saurolophus share is that distinct crest. Now, I have my hat, because again, kind of weird. It sits at the back. So when you put a hat on backwards and you have your beak, or I guess the bill facing that's what it's there for. It's kind of the back of your skull. It's going to sit there. Now, this crest has a lot different than other hadrosaurs. Look at hadrosaurs like Parasaurolophus. Had the big nasal crest that came over. Even looking back at Prosaurolophus, they all have very different crests. Lambeosauridae is the family, which is a part of the hadrosaur family, had crazy crests, and this thing had a dinky little backwards hat on. Now, it was made up of completely nasal bone. So picture your nose, and like my nose is not all nasal bone. It like stops right about the bridge of my nose, and then it's just cartilage and soft tissue. This thing was just nasal bone. So picture a chunk of nasal bone off the back of your head. That's a bit of a change. You're not wearing hoodies for a while, or ever actually. And we know that at one point it would have eventually fused to the back of the skull and to where it connected on the nose, but at some point it wasn't completely fused, which means it maybe could have moved around a little bit. So as I said, the angle was a diagonal for the back of the head, and like a backwards hat. And the idea of what the crest was used for is widely debated. As always, paleontology is just educated guesses, but as always, there are a lot of ideas. So the classic ideas: sexual displays. You gotta look good to get a date. In a dinosaur world, it's not easy. Or the classic one, recognition and identification with a species. So if let's say you're Osborne, you're in the plains of Alberta looking for someone to hook up with. You know, it's that time, the dinosaur day. You're like, I could go for that. The problem is you have two other hadrosaurs that might look a little similar. And unfortunately for dinosaurs, they weren't the brightest, we think, and maybe had bad eyesight at some points. So this dinosaur might have been like, you kind of look like something I could do, but maybe you aren't. You don't want to date the wrong dinosaur just to find out you can't make babies. And if you can't make the babies, what's the point? Furthering your gene pool as an animal is what you do. Your whole goal is to pass on your genes to make more. So this sexual identification, recognition, would have been a huge part of making sure that you wouldn't get mixed up and go for the wrong thing. Sometimes it's dark. It happens. Now, it could have been used for heat dispersion or thermoregulation, which is really cool. So basically, we think that maybe Stegosaurus used its plates to kind of thermoregulate so it can kind of warm up in the day. This could just been a little solar panel at the back of the head. Now, let's say it's cold out. You don't want to get the day started, but you can just tilt your head up and have the sun warm this little solar panel, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm good to go. So that's one idea we think. Another thing is looking at chameleons and basilisk lizards. We can think that maybe it was a spot for a bunch of extra muscles for the head, the neck, and the jaw. Or it could have been a resonator for sound to make them much more loud, and could have possibly been used to like a signal of sorts. Some of these ideas have validity and some don't. I should have got the name of the paleontologist who reconstructed the chamber that they think to make sound, and it kind of worked, but it kind of didn't. So there's some issues. Now, when it comes to being hungry, I know I go to my fridge, or maybe get a granola bar, or a bag of chips, or something. But what would a Saurolophus eat? And that's a great question. Thank you for asking. We know they were herbivores, so obviously plants, but what else? What kind of plants? Well, we know they sort of had a beak, as duck-billed dinosaurs are known for, and that beak will be used to crop vegetation. They could use it like little shears, they could use it to get water vegetation, it didn't really matter, but it was a very sharp part at the end of their lips that they could use to get through plants. We also know that it could have sort of chewed. So dinosaurs weren't known for chewing. That was one thing that was kind of weird. But Saurolophus had teeth that never stopped, like they called dental batteries, where they're just like packed full of teeth. And it's almost like a magazine and a gun. When you're firing ammo, they just go chunk, 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 chunk. So as you lose teeth, they just kind of fire back into where they were. And we know that it had hard pieces on the inside of its cheeks, so it could have used that to kind of like fake chew. Because again, the muscles aren't really there, we think. So a lot of plants would have definitely been on the menu. And the even crazy thing is, since it could stand up, it could have grazed from the ground to 4 meters above the ground. That's taller than that's two of me. It could have grazed 12 feet in the air, which is incredible. So again, a lot of plants on the table. And we know from looking at the eyes, the eyes share similarities with modern-day reptiles and birds. And these birds and reptiles are cathmeral. Now, Cathmeral, you might remember from last week's episode, it means a dinosaur that can kind of wake up whenever and just be aware and doing stuff at small periods of time, be it day or night. It's not, nocturnal. It's not diurnal, but it is Cathmeral. So it kind of wakes up. Oh, I'm kind of hungry. Get a snack. Go back to bed. Go lounge. Oh, I want this. Kind of like, sort of like lions, sort of, but not really. And we also have other hadrosaurs are Cathmeral or were Cathmeral. So it kind of adds this as evidence. And my last little bit, because this is kind of like a little anecdotal story, and I think it's kind of cool. So in 2018, a team found what would be dubbed the Dragon's Tomb. And the Dragon's Tomb just sounds like Indiana Jones and the Dragon's Tomb. Like, this is, run with this. In the Nenget Formation. This find contained a bone bed of Saurolophus and Gustyrostis, and classified as the largest monodominant, which means it's only one species, with at least 21 Saurolophus individuals. And these 21 individuals were in varying sizes. The three main sizes are juveniles, subadults, and adults. So this dinosaur, we found a bone bed of at least 21 of them. And they had every age, which is incredible. The team has shown that the bone bed is about 2,000 meters squared. So it's kind of like an area, which suggests that there could have been at least, or up to, or over 100 Saurolophus carcasses at one point, which is incredible. This is a dinosaur that puts an elephant to shame. And you'd have 100 of them just in one hole? That is amazing. Now, this amount of death would have been a catastrophic event. We call them mass mortality events, which basically means it could have been a flood, could have been an earthquake. It could have even been like we've seen it before where sometimes if you have an earthquake and you have underwater pockets of gas, they escape in through lakes and they just wipe out everything. It happened in Africa. Look it up. It's pretty cool. But it wasn't good at all. And this does show one thing, though, that they are definitely dead. But more so, we know there was a lot of them. And we call this gregarious. Gregarious? Yeah, gregarious. Which means they were chummy. They could get along well. So you'd have a family. And a family group is incredible. Now, unfortunately for our good friend Saurolophus osborni, there is nothing saying that it had friends, because we only found the one dead one and 2 skulls. So it might have been a very lonely dinosaur. And with that, folks, I am officially out of all my facts for Saurolophus. I hope you had a dynamite time and enjoyed the world of Saurolophus. And, I've been and always will be Eldin Atkin. You can follow us on Instagram, X, and all of our social medias at the DCSA Media Hub. You can find me at Eldin Atkin. You've been watching Dino live from the Media Hub on riotradio.ca.